Today about Megrahi's release. Do you regret it?
No, I mean, there's a disagreement. There's no secret about that. It's a profound disagreement. With great respect to both the Prime Minister and the President, that they didn't have to make the decision. The Justice Secretary of Scotland made the decision. Can I just point out that in your report, I heard a comment from David Miliband implying that he was not in favour of the release of Megrahi. What he actually said in the House of Commons on the 12th of October last year was, quote, although the decision was not one for the UK government, British interests, including those of UK nationals, British businesses and possibly security cooperation would be damaged if Megrahi were to die in a Scottish prison. I find that the most remarkable transformation in the space of 9 months, and perhaps Mr Miliband should be asked about his ever-changing position.
But let's talk about Barack Obama and David Cameron. After all, they are the gentlemen who are actually dealing with this at the moment, albeit it is something that is very much in your front yard. The fact is that Megrahi is still alive. And he's alive, and recommendations for the release were made by the medical director of the Scottish Prison Service. Was he wrong to say that, in his view, he would be dead within 3 months? The likelihood is he would be dead within 3 months.
I don't think anybody's seriously questioning the professional integrity of Dr Andrew Fraser. He made that decision based on reviewing the work of 4 consultants and also the primary physician.
Can we see that? Can we see those reports now by the clinicians?
So, I mean, I heard Glenn's comment on this. That report has been published for the first time ever. We published the report on which was sent to Kenny McCaskill, on which he based his decision. But
not the consultant's report?
No, the only thing that hasn't been published actually is the handwritten case notes.
Yes.
The full report which Kenny made his decision on has been published. But can I just point out, you know, I'm not a doctor, but I think it's entirely possible that somebody's life expectancy in a prison in Greenock is somewhat shorter than the life expectancy with aggressive drug therapy in Tripoli. It doesn't alter the fact that Mr Megrahi has terminal cancer and will die because he has terminal cancer.
But, in fact, that's quite interesting you should say that, because, in fact, that means that you understand that his prognosis was perhaps only 3 months because of the conditions in which he was being kept. Had he had those drugs, he might still be alive. Do you know the state of his health now? He might, you know, the decision to release him in 3 months was perhaps because of his conditions in Greenock, rather than the fact that they thought he'd be dead in 3 months.
Well, actually, that's the third criteria on the grounds of compassionate release, if you look at the detail of this. I mean, the point about the Scottish Government is we followed due process to the letter on compassionate relief. There's actually been 3 other cases of people released on compassionate grounds out of the 26 or so since the mid-1990s who've lived longer than a year. An English system, which is identical criteria. I seem to remember Ronnie Biggs was released before Mr Megrahi and is still alive. I mean, doctors make a best estimate. When Kenny McCaskill announced the decision, he pointed out Mr Megrahi might live for a shorter time, he might live for a longer time. It's not known to us. You just take the best medical opinion at the time, and that was provided by Dr Andrew Fraser of the Scottish Prison Service. And let me repeat, nobody doubts his professional integrity. In fact, let's just engage for a second, Kirsty, on what if. Let's say we hadn't taken that decision. Let's say we'd gone down the road favoured by the then British government and BP and God knows who else, and released Mr Megrahi on the prisoner transfer agreement. If we'd done that, then the US senators who are agitated on the BP lobbying, now we'd have had something to go on. Luckily, we didn't, and they don't. Or secondly, let's say we'd taken the decision to allow Mr Megrahi to die in Greenock prison, then all of the damaging issues which David Miliband, as Foreign Secretary, told the House of Commons about last October would have come into place. Luckily, there was an application which Kenny McCaskill was able to apply with due process, with no reference to these political criteria or to dirty oil deals or anything else, but on the due process of Scots law. That's where we stand, and that is very strong ground on which to argue a case. I
want to talk to you in a moment about BP, but can I just ask you one thing? Do you keep note in any way of Al Megrahi's progressing health or ill health?
There's a monthly report. That's part of the conditions of compassionate release, and that monthly report is sent to East Renfrewshire, who have got responsibility over this, and to the Scottish Government.
And what is presumably then that his health is good just now?
Mr Megrahi has terminal prostate cancer.
So you're not going to have just to clarify what the position is in the Scottish Government now then, do you feel there is no need to have a review of the decision? Well,
we are always saying, interestingly enough, there are areas, we published every single piece of information last year, and we did that quite deliberately to get it into public domain, with two exceptions. And that's because we weren't given permission to publish some correspondence with UK ministers and our correspondence with the United States government. From what I interpret of the press conference at the White House, it seems both the President of the United States and indeed the Prime Minister of the United Kingdom are keen to have all correspondence published. Then presumably they will now allow us to publish these remaining bits of information, and then we will have published every single piece of information in the hands of the Scottish Government.
Now, the senators clearly want to get to the bottom of this for their own purposes. If they ask you to come as a witness, perhaps to say whether or not you were lobbied by BP or whatever, are you prepared to go to Washington to do that?
Well, we'll cooperate with the Senate hearing, but, you're quite right to put the point in that fashion, because what the engine behind this renewed interest is, of course, the alleged BP involvement. And we can say categorically, and I think this can be done by letter, that BP did not lobby the Scottish Government in any way, in any sense whatsoever. Hence, I would argue and strongly reiterate the wisdom of us not going down the prisoner transfer route, in which BP were most certainly involved, and instead following the due processes of Scots law, in which BP had no involvement whatsoever.
But can I just ask you once again, have you been asked by the senators to go across? And if you haven't, if you are asked, will you go? Well,
the answer to the first question is no, we haven't been asked to go across. We've already said that we'd facilitate and help with any hearing that the senators have. But I think that can, the question is, did BP lobby us? The answer is no.
But in fact, if they had actually gone down that route, if BP had lobbied and said, look, this is very important to British business interests, it's very important to Scottish interests, BP, big interest in the North Sea, would it have been so bad if that lobbying had taken place? Isn't that what one's expected to do to promote British business?
Well, we've discussed this matter before 3 years ago, Kirsty, in 2007, when I revealed to the Scottish Parliament that there had been, on the same day, a deal to go forward with a prisoner transfer agreement and an oil deal with BP. I thought then, and I think now, that process was therefore tainted. I don't think you should confuse a judicial process with a process of economic deals. I think that was entirely wrong. It was the reason for our opposition to the prisoner transfer agreement, which we've maintained consistently over the last 3 years. Interestingly enough, when we had that last interview 3 years ago on this matter, when it was announced to the world, there was little interest from United States senators, and if I remember correctly, no opposition whatsoever from Her Majesty's opposition, led by David Cameron, on the issue of the prisoner transfer agreement.
Alex Salmond, thank you very much indeed.
Great pleasure.